Hi guys, today I'm going to do a quick book review of The Bubble Boy by Stewart Foster. Bubble Boy is a really great book. It did take me a little bit of time to get into. I must admit I read the first 30 or so pages and I wasn't quite sure where the book was going. It's written as a first-hand account by a young boy, Joe, who is essentially trapped inside a hospital room in London. He spends his whole life inside what he calls his bubble. He's got a long-term illness, which essentially means he's got very low immune system and can't go outside. He's never had the opportunity to go outside. He spends his whole life looking out of his window, watching the world go by, but not really having any part of it himself. His mother and father have died in an accident. They dip into that throughout the story, but that doesn't become an overriding theme. Essentially, he's in the world with just his sister, who is training to be a doctor herself, and is sort of balancing her life and training with being able to see Joe. It's a really interesting story. It is one that really invests you in the character. I felt a huge amount of empathy for Joe. I felt a huge amount of frustration that he couldn't experience even the simplest things that we take for granted on an everyday basis. He is desperate to go outside. He's desperate to feel the wind in his hair. He's desperate to just experience some of the smells, some of the tastes, some of the feelings that we take for granted every single day. He has a couple of nurses that spend a good deal of time with him, and these are people that he builds up good friendships with. One of them's Greg, who's been his sort of long-term nurse, and then a new character comes in, a chap called Amir. Now, Amir is a nurse who's new to the country, who has fairly broken English, who, as a character, it comes through that he's quite an entertaining chap. Some of the things he says, some of his ideas, they're amazing. He believes in aliens, which at first Joe finds very, very weird and is a bit freaked out and doesn't really want Amir as his nurse. But as he begins to get to know him a bit better, he really does love spending time with him. Now, Joe's got what is essentially a pen friend or an online friend called Henry, who's based in Philadelphia. Now, Henry suffers from what appears to be exactly the same sort of condition as Joe. Henry spends his time in a bubble. Henry spends his time in hospital. But Henry has been given hope that by working with NASA, there's hope that he could have a suit created for him that would give him the opportunity to go outside, to essentially experience some of the things that he or Joe have never been able to experience. Now, Joe gets very jealous. Joe wants a piece of this. Joe mentions this to Amir, and essentially Amir is going to Amir comes up with the idea of making Joe his very own suit, but this has to be top secret. Now, I won't go into too much detail. I won't ruin what happens, but there are some wonderful parts to this story. It is funny, it is emotional, it is exciting, it's very, very frustrating at times. But I'd say in terms of where this book goes, it just makes you feel so fortunate for the life you have and the things. I honestly was sitting there thinking, I take these things for granted every single day. Now, doing this and reading this got me thinking what an excellent book this would be to share with our classes. I think there are things we take for granted every day. There's brilliant parts of this world, this earth, things that we just do and smell and taste and experience and don't even think about it. And it's quite fascinating to think if someone didn't have the chance to experience those things, how different their life could be. So I think there's opportunities to bring it into learning. I think there's opportunities to have some really deep and meaningful discussions with our classes about this. And I think it's just a really interesting book. It's written in a slightly different way to some of the other books I've read recently. It's not quite as descriptive, but it is a wonderful, wonderful first-hand account of somebody in a truly unique situation. Really hope you enjoy it. I am moving on to Holes now by Louis Sachar. I've heard such great things about that book, so about 30 or 40 pages in and I'm turning the pages quickly and enjoying it very, very much. So Hope you've enjoyed this book review. I'll pop one up for holes when I've done it, but this is The Bubble Boy by Stewart Foster. As always, if you like it, please give it a thumbs up. Even better, hit subscribe. Thanks guys, have a good bank holiday. Cheers.